Good morning, and thank you for that introduction. It is such an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you this morning a little bit about one of my favorite research projects. So for today's presentation, this is my agenda. I will provide you with a general overview of the project. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the reasons that inspired the execution of this project in Costa Rica and the rest of the Mesoamerican region. Then I'm going to talk about the project stages, what we have done so far, what's next, what's coming next for us, the impact of the lessons that we have learned through this process, and then some final remarks. So this project is a 3-year project. It started in 2017, and it includes research, extension, and also teaching components. The project is executed at the University of Costa Rica, specifically at the National Research Center for Food Science and Technology. An interesting fact about this center is that it belongs to a cooperative partnership among government, industry, and academia. In our executive committee, we have representatives from the Minister of Agriculture and also the Minister of Science and Technology. But we have a pilot plan, a processing plan, and then laboratories to perform sensory, microbiological, and then chemical analysis. This is my team. We are 3 researchers with different backgrounds in food microbiology, food safety, dairy processing, statistics, and education. And then we have 3 undergraduate research assistants dedicated to this project. Something that is different in Costa Rica than in the rest of the countries is that to obtain our bachelor degree, we have to perform a research project. We have to perform a 1-year-long research project. So these students are working to obtain their bachelor degree through our project. And this project is a reality thanks to the financial support of ILSI, then the University of Costa Rica, and FAO is also collaborating in the project. Our main objective was to evaluate the efficacy of the currently applied safety control measures for 3 highly consumed products in the region. But we are also aiming to develop science-based and technical guidance. You cannot find that information right now online, or you cannot find that information at all. We are also aiming to develop educational materials for the safe processing of these products. So here is important to mention the motivation behind the execution of this project. This is the Mesoamerican region. It includes a little bit of Mexico, but it includes other countries from Central America, such as Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and my home country, Costa Rica. There are several multilateral organizations, such as FAO, that have alerted about the numerous outbreaks associated to the consumption of contaminated dairy products. But that's all what we know. We don't have a strong surveillance system, so we don't know the number of cases, and there are no projects trying to figure out how to solve this issue. Dairy products are highly consumed in the region, and we're happy about that, right? Because they have a high nutritional value, but they are also potential hazardous products due to their physical chemical properties, pH, and water activity. But the other interesting fact about this product is that there are a numerous amount of artisanal processors in the region. And by numerous, I'm saying that it represents 40% of the dairy industry in the Mesoamerican region. So they are not big companies, they are small or extremely small companies offering the products in the market. On the other side of the picture, we have this scenario. There's a lack of regulations to ensure the safety of these products. It might sound crazy, but in our region, it is not mandatory to pasteurize the milk to manufacture a dairy product. So it is very common to use raw milk. And there's also a lack of technical guidelines in Spanish and lay terms. I know that there is a lot of information in English, and there's a lot of information in Spanish from Spain. But we don't talk the same Spanish that it is taught in Spain. And then there is a lack of validation study evaluating the treatments that our processors are applying instead of the regular pasteurization. So these pictures were taken as part of the project late in 2017. So here you can see some of the hazards that we have. We have milk stirred at room temperature, exposed to the environment, and then we have the processor making cheese right on the floor. So this explains why it is so important to generate educational material for these processors right now. On the other side, we know that FDA has alerted about the high risk of listeriosis due to the on pregnant women, Hispanic pregnant women, due to the consumption of soft cheeses and other unpasteurized products. In my current strategy, we understand why I'm so concerned about this fact, but I'm a food scientist with a background in microbiology, so I can make some changes. I can prevent some issues. I know how to protect myself and how to protect my kid. But what about the rest of Hispanic women? Who's going to tell them that this is a hazard of concern? Who's going to tell them how to protect their kids? So we're hoping that this project will. So it's as easy as let's pasteurize our milk. But when you talk with processors and regulatory representatives, it's not as easy as it seems, because they think that the product is going to negatively change, that the sensory properties won't be accepted by the consumer. They think that they haven't done this before, so they're fine. That's what they think, or they don't know how to do it. They think that they have to spend a lot of money to pasteurize their milk, even though we know that is not true. But on the other side, we have regulatory representatives saying, like, my processors are using alternative technologies instead of pasteurization. When we ask about those alternative treatments, we found that they're using dry salting, acidification, heating, and fermentation. But where is the science behind that? How do we know that these alternative treatments are good enough to ensure the safety of these products? Because of that, we developed this project. This project is for the whole Mesoamerican region, but it is executed in Costa Rica. It is executed here because it is one of the happiest countries in Earth. That's not a real reason, but if you Google the Happy Planet Index, you see that I'm not lying. But the reason why we are doing the project here is because we share the same culinary heritage than the rest of the countries. So we understand what they eat, how they eat it, and why they eat it. But also, we share the same productive practices. As crazy as it may sound, these white balls that you see hanging here at room temperature, those are cheeses. That's the way that we are used to buy our cheeses. And it's acceptable. For us, it's acceptable. That's the only way that we know that these products are commercialized, even though science says that this is extremely hazardous, right? But there is another interesting fact in Costa Rica. It might sound surprising to you, but we don't have an army since 1984, and all the funding that was supposed to be used for military purposes is used for education. So our soldiers are our students. Because of that, Costa Rica has the highest literacy rate in the region. And because of that, we think that we can develop an education system, a training program for processors in the region. Only the University of Costa Rica is providing more than 45 training programs per year in food processing and safety. And we are training more than 1,000 people per year. It may sound like just few people, but if you think that I live in a 4 million people country, 1,000 people per year, it's a lot. So the project includes 5 stages. One of the things was to select the products. We decided to select 3 products that are representative in the region, that these products are consumed in every single country of the region. You can eat one of these products once a day, daily, so they are highly consumed. Then we decided to evaluate the application of manufacturing practices and to perform a microbiological diagnostic. So we have evaluated the process of genetic E. coli and the Neisseria monocytogenes. We have also standardized the formulation and processing conditions. If you try to find the formulation of these products online, you will not be able to find this information. The way that you learn how to process these products is because somebody else know how to do it, and then you learn. Then we want to validate at least one safety control measure applied to these products to eventually generate It's not working anymore. Okay, there you go. To eventually generate processing guidelines and educational material to train not only processors, but also educators in the region. So far we have selected our products. We selected 3 highly consumed products. In the region, they are representative from the region. We selected a fermented milk, a dry salted cheese, and a pulled curd cheese. Something that these products have in common is that they're commercialized at room temperature. The other step that we did was to evaluate the good manufacturing practices. For this part, we are working with 15 processors that voluntarily joined in the project. They're also donating products to evaluate the presence of E. coli and also Listeria monocytogenes. And we are using the local regulation for good manufacturing practices to see what is the current status, what's the thing that we need to solve. Then we had to learn how to formulate and how to process these products. So we have spent a lot of time learning about how to make these products. Then we have identified the common good manufacturing practices deficiencies. I can tell you that unfortunately we have found E. coli in almost every single product, at least one time per processor, regardless if they pasteurize or if they don't pasteurize their milk, which indicates that we have a lack of application of good manufacturing practices. But we haven't found Listeria monocytogenes yet, which is good. For formulation and processing, we have to spend a lot of time learning how to process these products because we learn in this process that there are some secret steps. The processors know how to make it, but that information wasn't available. So now we have learned from processors of how to make these products and how to obtain a product that is accepted by the consumer in the region. Then for the specific products, we have evaluated some validation. We have validated some of the alternative treatments that the processors are doing instead of pasteurization. So for the pulled curd cheese, we have evaluated that heat penetration process to see what's the lethality associated to that process. But we also have evaluated, based on the physical chemical properties of the cheese, pH, water activity, what is the potential for pathogens growth, especially Listeria, Salmonella, E. coli, and stuff. And this is after molding. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So to evaluate this probability, we are using the cheese shelf stability predictor that was developed by the University of Wisconsin-Madison a couple of years ago. And so far, we know that there are more than 4 different ways to manufacture this product. So we selected these ways and we evaluated that heat penetration and cooling kinetics for all the different ways that the processors are using in the region. And we found that these are the lethalities associated to the process. Regardless of the system evaluated, there are alarming standard deviations, which indicates that the variability is extremely high. The same processor is not doing the same thing every time that they are making their cheese. But in addition, you cannot achieve a 5-log reduction of the pathogens of concern. So now we have science-based evidence to talk with our regulators and tell them, you know, the current stretching step cannot substitute pasteurization, and therefore pasteurization must be required for these products. We also found that based on the pH and water activity of the product, basically all of the pathogens of concern, E. coli and Listeria, may grow in the product during storage. So this indicates that good manufacturing practices and refrigeration are strictly required to ensure the safety of this product. For this process, we have had the opportunity to share the most important findings. So we are already developing educational material that we are validating with people that are working with these products. So the idea is to validate the educational material, and then this information is going to be available for free in our website for other educators and other processors in the region. For the case of the fermented milk, we decided to evaluate the effects of the fermentation temperature, the use of cultures, and the effect of pasteurizing the milk prior to fermentation in order to see the effect on the growth of lactic acid bacteria and the acidification kinetics. And what we found is that the most effective way to obtain the fermented milk, keeping the same sensory properties of the product that the consumer is that recognizes for this product, is by pasteurizing the milk and then by adding a culture. To select the culture, it wasn't easy because we needed to preserve the sensory properties of this product. But you can see that this is more effective than the traditional way. This is by using non-pasteurized milk and non-cultured. This indicates that we can obtain the exact same product in 24 hours in comparison with almost 3 days. So this is going to impact the sector because of the results. And in addition, we can reach a pH of 4.4 or below in less than 24 hours, and that means that Listeria monocytogenes won't be able to grow in this product. Whereas in most of the samples that are available in the market, Listeria can grow without limitations. On the other hand, we have the dry salted cheese. For these products, we have evaluated the effect of the salting method, dry or humid, and we also have evaluated the probability of pathogen growth in the product, considering also the size of the cheese. And we found that regardless of the treatment that we use, the final water activity of this product is always higher than 0.6. This indicates that this product, it is not shelf stable, and therefore the product must be commercialized under refrigeration. But now we can tell regulators, there is something that we need to do with this particular product. We haven't finished yet. There are some things that we would like to do before finishing this project. For example, we want to develop and transfer the science-based guidelines that we are developing, thanks to information that we have collected so far. Then we would like to develop more educational material. We want to train, we want to provide some training for processors and regulators in the region. And we are also targeting to develop educational videos for consumers, because we are aware that some processors may not change their current practices unless the consumer demands it. So one of the things that we would like to do is to develop videos that will be shared through social media, which is one of the most effective ways to reach the population currently. And then, of course, we would like to share this information as a model project in a scientific publication, not only to show the results, but also to share the model that we use, because it can be used for other traditional products that have not been studied yet in the world. Talking a little bit about the impact and lessons that we have learned, we hope that this information will contribute to ensure the safety of these and similar food products. This is just a model, right? But we hope to expand the information in the rest of the region. If the results are eventually considered for regular to establish regional regulations, we'll be extremely happy. These results will benefit consumers, processors, but at the end, it will benefit us. It will benefit society as a whole. We hope that this information may decrease the number of outbreaks associated with the consumption of artisanal dairy products, but it can be used to improve consumers' lifestyle. Thanks to this project, we reinforce the importance of bringing science to the productive sectors, but also we know now how necessary is their knowledge, because the knowledge is basic to execute an applicable research project with results can be immediately used to improve consumers' lifestyle. I would like to finish this presentation just indicating that science and society are not static, right? Things are changing. So as a researcher starting my career, I really hope and I'm convinced that it is our responsibility to get out of our laboratories, to get out of our comfort zone and talk to people, to see exactly what they need, to see exactly what's the knowledge that is lacking, even though it seems extremely basic, because this seems an extremely basic project, but it's what my population needed. So we need to figure out how our projects, our research projects, can help to solve their issues, because at the end of the day, their issues are our issues as well. Over the years, funding for research has been limited and unlimited, And we know that it is challenging, but we cannot forget that every single research effort that is performed must impact and improve human living conditions. This project, I'm sure that it is not a solution for all the food safety issues that we have in the Mesoamerican region. I'm sure of that. But I can assure that it attempts to solve one particular issue, and maybe it will help to start similar initiatives in the region that at the end of the day, all together will make the difference. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. And if time permits, I will be happy to take a few questions.
Good morning. I'm Mike Doyle from the University of Georgia in the United States. Excellent presentation, and you bring to light a very important topic that are these types of cheeses you describe are not unique to Costa Rica. These are made from South America to the U.S. and other parts of the world, and the microbiological food safety issues associated with them are common. So is this a topic that needs to be addressed at a global level? And in terms of developing guidelines for the best production of these types of cheeses and so forth, and where further research needs to be done in this area, and perhaps ILSI Global could be a facilitator in that direction in addressing this topic for the world.
Yeah, I'm convinced that this should be a global initiative, because also if you see migration in the world, like Latin American people, we are all over the place, and we are consuming these products. We are doing what we can to obtain the products regardless of where we are. And you can see foodborne outbreaks associated to these products in different parts of the world where we shouldn't find the products because of the culinary practices and the information, the science that is available in those countries. So I truly believe that this will highlight like some interesting and hazardous, we are addressing a safety issue that should be addressed globally. I don't know exactly how, but when the information will be available, then it will alert the global population that there is something that we need to do. I think that codex can help us, because these products, as you mentioned, these products are consumed all over the world. They are consumed not only in Costa Rica, but in all the Mesoamerican region and in other countries, even in some parts of Africa. They are very similar products. So I really hope that this information will start an initiative to develop technical guidelines.
Thank you.
Manuel Baldeón from Universidad Tecnológica Equinoccial. Congratulations for the presentation.
Thank you.
In Ecuador, the government has a very important program to foster what they call artisanal industry, and especially in products like dairy products. And this will be a very important method to educate people that are doing that. Now, in your project, did you make evident for those that do the cheese, for example, what would be the effect of doing properly the pasteurization and so forth, like doing an analysis before and after the procedures in terms of microbiology or measuring any other hazardous? Have you done that?
Yeah, one interesting exercise that we did, it was for the fermented milk, because the processors were not happy about, like, let's pasteurize and use a culture. They think that the product will be the same. So we decided to do a blind test, and we had samples of the product that was pasteurized using the culture and the product that they produced to see if they were able to identify any differences, and they weren't. So I have to say that that exercise helped them to understand that they can improve the quality of their product, but at the same time, they can obtain a product faster, at a very good cost, but then they will obtain a product that will be accepted by the consumer.
I join my fellows in congratulating you on the presentation.
Thank you.
I would like Sara Valdez from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. sorry. I would like to say that the problem that you point out happens and is an example of Mexico and many other countries as it has been pointed out. We have normativity, right? Most countries do. But people that prepare those kind of products, artisans, have no education. And they think the law doesn't apply to them. I've been to forums where I show the data and they say, but then what law applies to me? The same law. So what we have seen clearly is a lack of education, and we need programs to ensure that normativity stays in play and we can assure the food safety of the products we sell. Thank you.
I totally agree with you. Education level is an issue, and we are taking that into account for the development of the educational materials. If you see our guidelines, you have no text there. You have pictures or you have data that is extremely important, such as temperature and time, and that's it. And for the training with processors, we have done like a different kind of training. We go to the pilot plant, we teach them how to use a pH meter, how to measure water activity, because for them it's easier to learn whereas when we are doing the activities that we're telling them to do, it is not the same to go to a training program online, for example. That's not an option for our processors. And also it is not an option to go to a classroom and try to pay attention for 8 hours. That won't work for that population.
I will be quick. Wellington Pinto from University of São Paulo, Brazil. Congratulations on your talk. I think it's very important what you're doing. And in Brazil, we have similar products. And there are thousands of families that depend upon producing these types of products. What happens in Brazil is that we are having now legislation that it's specific for this type of producers, and it's different from the legislation that is followed by the industry. So that, I think, is a way that we can work together, not only in Brazil, but also in Mesoamerican, many countries, that we have to have legislation that is specific to these small producers, because you cannot have the same standard, let's say, for the industry and for the small producers, because they can't follow what the industry is following. Of course, taking into consideration all the safety measures. One of the things that it's very hard to convince the producers is in relation to pasteurization, because they really believe that if they pasteurize the milk, it's going to lose the properties of the product. So, and our legislation is going with the producers in Brazil. So they are allowed not to pasteurize the milk, but the cheese has to maturate for at least some time. So it's just a comment, but I think it's very important that we keep in contact and work together.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jenny Chen from ILSI Taiwan. I think I'm echoing the same message, because government can set up some sanitation standard. So for the product on the market, it doesn't matter whether it's big industry or small industry, they need to have some basic standard. I think in Taiwan we are doing that. So government can monitor the quality, and if there's some unqualified product on the market, then the name will be in the newspaper. So people will pay attention to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that there is a lot of things to do with this topic, but we have two options, right? Just pay attention to the things that are good, or just decide to work in something that needs to be done.